Human beings are innately social creatures. We crave connection and intimacy, but also social advancement and prestige. What better way to achieve such than through gift giving? Gift giving is an act that is so natural to humans that we never think to interrogate why it is such. In our minds, it's natural to share gifts with the people we care about in order to strengthen or establish our connection with them. Humans' gift giving demonstrates our broader capacity for symbolic abstraction, wherein we invest emotional value into something that has no utilitarian purpose. Although steeped in consumerism in the modern age, gift giving has a long historical and scientific origin, to the point that the concept of giving and receiving gifts could be considered a part of human DNA. The tradition of giving gifts has been widely practiced amongst ancient and diverse cultures throughout the world. Evidence has been found even amongst prehistoric humans, also known as cavemen. When we speak of quote-unquote cavemen, we're typically referring to more than just like simple cave dwellers with thick eyebrows screaming at fires. Much of our evidence of cavemen come from Europe, Siberia, and the Middle East, whose research was the most widely proliferated, with whom we attribute the Paleolithic age to. This period ranged from about 3 million to 12,000 years ago and was characterized by the use of stone tools. We are thought to have utilized gift giving as a way to show love and affection to one another. According to paleoanthropologist Ariana Burke, prehistoric humans utilized gift giving to convey emotions to each other through symbolic objects. They gave aesthetic symbols made of feathers, tree bark, stones, ivory, teeth, shells, decorated bones, and so on, crafted into necklaces, bracelets, and clothing, utilized to identify themselves as a member of their social group, or even to create bonds with individuals outside of their group. Practices like this were vital for the nomadic tribes of the Paleolithic era, who relied on cohesion as a group in order to survive. An early example of such arose in Germany in 2008 after a 40,000-year-old ivory figure was discovered, known as the Venus of Holy Fels. The figure was carved from mammoth tusk. It was most likely worn as an amulet or a pendant. Across the ancient world, gift-giving evolved alongside the rise of organized religion. Within Abrahamic religions, gifts are synonymous with charity and selflessness. Gift giving then becomes a spiritual practice meant to sever one's natural inclination to have worldly material desires. Theological debate does exist on this topic, wherein rabbinic literature notes that although a gift can be given as charity, it creates inequality between the two parties, which is claimed to be contrary to the religious idea that all humans are equal under God. Through this theological conflict, we can see how gift giving is a multifaceted topic. On one hand, it is wholesome and selfless, but on the other hand, it can be used to exert authority and superiority. Many of us give gifts out of habit, not necessarily meaning to lean into one pool or the other. Despite such, it can be said that no gift is exchanged freely. In modern society and much earlier, gift giving is a social game in which there are rituals, expectations, and stipulations that come along with our perfectly wrapped presents. Even in the broader animal kingdom, chimpanzees have been observed giving food to female chimpanzees in order to increase their chances of getting a mate. Despite such, every culture has a different meaning attached to gift giving, along with the patterns, goals, and customs associated with it. Ancient Egyptians were one of the earliest study civilizations to practice the tradition of giving gifts. Rather than strengthening social bonds with peers or neighbors, they gave gifts as offerings to their gods. These offerings were in exchange for protection, a favor, health, wealth, or just general mercy. The deceased were buried with gifts that were intended to guarantee them a safe passage into a comfortable afterlife. They believed that everything buried with them followed them into the other side. These offerings included everyday items such as bowls and food, but also jewelry, idols, or furniture for the more wealthy amongst the dead. Gifts were also given to pharaohs on their coronation day, which marked their rebirth as an actual deity, and thus someone whom Egyptians wanted favor from. All of this did not mean that gifts were not given to one another. Their interpretation of the new year was a holiday for the exchanging of wishes of prosperity and divine blessings, accompanied by gifts like vases or small flasks filled with water from the Nile. In ancient Greek society, the importance of gifts and gift giving and the role they played are illustrated in the foundational works of ancient Greek literature written by Homer, who was considered among the greatest influences on ancient Greek culture and education. Homer's Odyssey portrays the ancient Greek conception of hospitality and the importance of gift giving. Homer believed that one should extend gifts to strangers because generosity and kindness towards others was a force for social good. This concept of hospitality was considered helpful in maintaining order. The rites and traditions of offering gifts in exchange for divine protection continued with the ancient Greeks. For example, a child was given small amulets after birth, which were supposed to protect it from diseases. People believed that evil spirits haunted a person on their birthday. To ward off the evil and to protect the designated individual, it was customary in ancient Greece to offer wishes and gifts. Gifts were meant to serve as protective amulets. This practice is said to be one of the modern influences for as to why we give gifts to people on their birthday, further emphasized by our desire to give gifts that improves the livelihood of the recipient. In ancient China, gift giving as offerings was said to be an important part of diplomatic relations. Ancient emperors would send elaborate gifts to neighboring kingdoms as a gesture of goodwill and to secure alliances. In return, the receiving kingdom would reciprocate with gifts of equal value. Middle-aged Europe is said to be when edible and specifically romantic gifts came to be prominent. When Europe entered medieval times, there was a specific focus by religious leaders on trying to abolish superstitious habits. Amulets in particular, an object generally worn for protection, were ruled out as a symbol of idolatry and devil worship. Despite such, the exchange of gifts still played an important role in social interactions in the Middle Ages. They were used to foster relationships via things like dowries, to prove loyalty to influential individuals like royalty and church figureheads, and so on. Gifts were also exchanged on New Year's Day between individuals, although it may have been more so about showing authority and prestige, more so than about generosity. The most common gifts were edible goods, with food being considered a powerful status symbol. This was due to how much your social rank influenced what types of food you could eat. In this way, offering treats and inviting guests to festive dinner parties was meant to show off wealth and to impress those around you. Up until this point, flowers and other plants were predominantly reserved for medicinal use. It was during the Middle Ages that flowers became a symbol of love. Due to the Roman Catholic Church shunning public displays of romantic affection, flowers began to be a popular way to convey love for another without punishment. Flowers began to carry different meanings as gifts that still hold today. For example, it is considered improper to give roses to your sick coworker, but expected for your romantic partner. Outside of flowers, singing songs meant to serenade, reciting poems, and sewing locks of hair into clothing all became common expressions of love within a romantic relationship. Many of these practices and ideals persist into our modern age. As society developed further over time, more stipulations were added to gift giving. Gender norms have long since existed, but it was during the 18th century that giving gifts began to have gender norms incorporated into its practices. Now, women were not expected to give gifts to men who they were not related to or married to. Gifts also became gendered in and of themselves, where giving men things like shaving kits, tobacco, pens, and desk sets became more popular. Feminine gifts became more closely tied to what your relationship to the woman in question was in order to avoid social stigma and scandals. Common female gifts became soaps, perfumes, jewelries, handkerchiefs, knitting needles, fruit, candy, and flowers. This began to stretch even as children, where boys would receive things like toy chains and soldiers, while girls were given dolls and smaller versions of cooking and cleaning supply. Gifts then became a way of preparing children to step into their gender roles in society. we also began to introduce morality into gift giving, wherein people could be undeserving of gifts now, giving rise to the idea of the whole bad children get coals for Christmas type idea. Gift wrap was later introduced near the end of the 19th century, meant to add a flair of mystery and excitement to the exchange. Consumerism soon after became a central component of gift giving. In 1917, Hallmark created the gift wrap that we all know and use extensively today. Normal tissue paper had previously been used to wrap gifts. However, when that ran out ahead of the upcoming holiday season, the company came up with an alternative just in time for Christmas Day. In the 1950s, the introduction of chain stores and shopping malls made gifts all the more accessible and common. The 60s are often referred to as the golden age of advertising, wherein companies and retailers started to create stories and characters surrounding their products and featured personalities to establish a stronger connection between viewers and the brand. In the 20th century, gifts became expected on multiple occasions outside of just holidays, including on graduations, housewarmings, gender reveals, baby showers, Mother's/Father's Day, Valentine's Day, and so on. With the spread of capitalism, so came the spread of situational gift giving. Despite gift giving starting as a crafting art form or simply finding symbolic value in natural objects, it has over time coalesced into a race to find who can give the most expensive or the most meaningful mass-produced item. Gifts are increasingly being brought online or becoming intangible. Gift cards for digital experiences, such as subscriptions for music or streaming services, are increasingly popular. Intangible gifts that provide a more tangible experience, like a photo shoot, a surprise weekend away, and so on, have also become more popular. We have also come to value gifts like this more. Ones that are less personal or tangibly meaningful, but that offer more enjoyment and customization to the recipient in particular. Regardless of the capitalistic influence, gift giving is a foundation of humanity that we will never seem to let go of, whether we have access to a Walmart and a Hallmark card or not. The act of gift giving is a cultural act defined by the traditions of its time, deeply entrenched in the rituals inherited from our elders. Despite such, gifts are progressively becoming less focused on the exchange between the recipient and the giver, and more so on extracting the maximum positive reaction possible, in the same way that capitalism in and of itself seeks to refine production without a defined end, only in pursuit of the highest, in this case emotional profit, with the lowest production cost. Is this necessarily bad? Like everything, that's multifaceted and subjective. Personally, I would like to see a world which, gave gifts based purely on its symbolic value more so than its utility or efficiency, but I don't think that everyone thinks that way, and I'd probably be labeled a bad gift giver for operating off of that. Generally, we do not fear that our gift will be outright rejected. The social norms of gifting have made it so that we only hand over presents to those who we want to have relationships with. French sociologist Marcel Mauss, in his book The Gift, establishes that rejecting or not handing over a gift is a way of dismissing a relationship. Symbolic interactionism, meaning that people utilize symbols to interact with one another, is the primary cognitive process utilized during gift giving. If someone gifts you toothpaste, you wouldn't appreciate the fact that someone got you a basic necessity that you might have casually mentioned you were running low on, as much as you would be overanalyzing the symbolic meaning of someone gifting you toothpaste, i.e. that your breath stank. Generally, when you get a gift, we try to believe that it is the thought that counts. When you consider it deeply, you feel happy when you get a gift because of the symbolic meaning that is attached to it. When you get a present that you're not too fond to, it can be interpreted as thoughtlessness, even if the giver had unselfish motives. With the giving of a quote-unquote good gift, sociologist Dimitri Bortelmans argues that it creates a debt balance. In our society, to prevent being seen as ungrateful, gifts need to be repaid with gifts, creating a gift-giving cycle. Within that, we feel that something of equal value should be given. If the perceived value of the gift is lower than our expectations, then culturally, that is supposed to mean that the giver just doesn't value the relationship that much. On the flip side, giving something that is above the expected value of the recipient could show that you are too interested in a relationship, then causing discomfort. There are a handful of gifts that can be given without any expectation of return, like those given to young kids whom we know can't uphold their end of the debt balance. This also extends to gifts given via volunteering or donating. This can be argued in one of two ways. We could argue that this comes from a place of genuine love and compassion, or that the giver has their gift reciprocated in another way, emotionally. Several studies suggest that charitable gift giving activates the pleasure center of the brain that releases the hormone dopamine, raising the theory that altruism could be more so due to the fact that we feel good about ourselves after we do it. In one study led by investigators at the University of Zurich in Switzerland, researchers gave 50 people $100 and instructed half of them to spend it on themselves and the other half to spend it on someone else over the next 4 weeks. Then they performed functional magnetic resonance imaging to measure activity in a brain associated with generosity and pleasure during a social sharing task. They found that those who spent money on other people had more generous and fair interactions with other people and reported higher levels of happiness after the experiment was over. It is then said that the true novelty of gift giving comes from the sustained release of oxytocin it facilitates, as opposed to a brief burst of dopamine. Provided we don't let the stress get to us, the process of considering, shopping for, wrapping, and giving a gift to someone we love all gives us a sustained release of love hormones. When we are overly concerned with our gift, the chemical response is very different. Failing to deliver in an equitable gifting scenario signals psychological distress signals due to our desire to be perceived positively in a social setting. But why do we give gifts on Christmas in particular? Christmas has long been associated with Christianity, specifically the birth of Jesus. In the story of his birth, it is said that 3 wise men traveled far and wide in order to give baby Jesus gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. As opposed to come and believe, this is not the true origin of gift giving. As we explored, holiday gift giving is an ancient tradition. It got its root from the ancient Roman celebration of Saturnalia, wherein it was customary to give thanks to the agricultural god Saturn around the time of 336 CE. On New Year's Day, a sacrifice would be made and a banquet would be held for people in every social rank. The celebration was popular due to the fact that servants and slaves were allowed to interact with their masters and could receive generous gifts. Later, with the spread of Christianity, it became easier to adopt and rebrand pagan traditions rather than trying to convince entire populations of people to abandon their core practices and holidays. For a while, there was an outright ban on practices like Saturnalia and pagan practices in general, but once they realized that people were going to do it anyways, it was like, oh, wait, hold up. We can find a way to make this work for both of us. In this way, Christmas borrows from the concept of Saturnalia with its annual gift giving. The practices continue to evolve, heavily influenced by Saint Nicholas, who was famous for giving gifts to children. The masses then began to focus less on large, elaborate celebrations like those of Saturnalia, and more so on gift giving in and of itself and the morals and virtues that come along with it. In the 19th century, the image of Saint Nicholas inspired the creation of Father Christmas, creating a figurehead for holiday generosity and compassion in an admittedly brilliant marketing strategy. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert also played a key role in propelling Christmas gift giving to social normalcy. The royals were trendsetters known for setting up tables loaded with presents for each other and for their children, surrounded by elaborate Christmas-time decorations. For less elaborate families, gifts were very modest, consisting of small homemade trinkets and edible foods. These presents would be put into stockings and hung from the Christmas tree. Once gifts became too large to fit in stockings, they were replaced by ornaments and presents that were placed underneath the tree rather than on it. But now that we have explored the history and psychology behind gift giving, how exactly does one give a good gift? The first question to consider is it really the thought that counts? Well, unfortunately, according to research, the answer is no. Although we can be grateful for receiving something, we often feel emotionally invalidated when the gift feels impersonal. The problem with the concept of it being just a thought that counts is that it leads to us as the giver giving generic consumerism-oriented gifts rather than the ones that are personal and speak to the recipient's needs and love languages. On the side of the giver, we feel as though the thought is what is important because we personally know how much time, effort, and love went into the making or purchase of our gift. We run into conflict because of the fact that the recipient does not receive just your thoughts. They receive whatever you give them and they make an assessment based off that alone. We tend to think that people want what we pick for them rather than what they've explicitly asked for, when really the opposite is reality. When someone asks for something, they will always be happy to receive it and probably even respect it, and will be disappointed when they receive something else. Despite this, the desire to be too thoughtful can lead to us overthinking, resulting in us getting things that are too niche to be useful for the recipient. An example of this is people's aversion towards giving cash or gift cards because they see it as too impersonal to be an actual meaningful gift. People believe this despite giving money being a socially acceptable and a welcome gift. Recipients also tend to prefer more flexibility rather than being given something with a clear-cut purpose. We end up ignoring this fact because we not only want to prove that we have love and knowledge of someone, but we also want the emotional satisfaction and bonding that a good gift facilitates. It also seems that this is something that has evolved more so over time, especially when, rent is hard to make. Sometimes you just appreciate getting that cash more so than getting, say, a t-shirt that looks cool, but you won't get to wear it out. When it comes to deciding on a good gift, science suggests that giving experiences evoke more positive emotions than giving material items. People who give experimental gifts such as event tickets, gift certificates to restaurants, special trips, and so on feel closer and more connected to the gift giver compared to those who receive material gifts, according to the results of multiple studies published in 2016 in the Journal of Consumer Research. The researchers noted that experimental gifts can have a connecting effect, even if the giver and recipient aren't sharing the experience. If an experimental gift isn't feasible, material gifts can create a similar sense of connection when presented in ways that emphasize experience. For example, giving a gift that references back to a valued shared memory or inside joke. Gifts that require a lot of effort, for example, something that's handmade or something that took you a really long time to find, can be an important way for a giver to symbolically show just how much they care. In order for that time to be recognized by a recipient, however, that gift should align with what the recipient genuinely wants. Giving from the heart can also take the form of sentimental gifts. Research shows that givers tend to shy away from sentimentality more than they should, especially considering that recipients actually do appreciate presents with emotional value more. These are items that directly speak to the value and love that you may have for another. There also tends to be an unspoken list of rules when it comes to gift giving. Let's explore a few of these. First one, don't expect a gift in return. Point blank. 2, personalized gifts are more thoughtful than common ones. 3, try not to overspend. There is no prize for spending the most on someone. In fact, it can make someone feel uncomfortable to receive lavish presents. A meaningful gift is just as good as an expensive one, if not better. Next, use gift wrap or a gift bag. There are a few benefits to wrapping up a present. For one, it helps them to look nicer and more festive. Or sometimes a person might just want to open their gifts in private. Not everyone enjoys being a center of attention while opening a present or wants you to actually see their reaction, especially if they know that you want something big or dramatic, but they're not feeling the gift or they just don't have the energy for that. Next, shop local and small businesses. If you want to avoid generic and personal gifts, you should look at local businesses and small businesses. You're more likely to find unique and personalized presents there. You can also check out local places by searching social media or marketplaces like Etsy. Next, include a gift receipt. We all want to believe that we have amazing gift ideas that everyone would love to receive, but in reality, that's not always the case. Especially for big events, it's acceptable to include a gift receipt in case it needs to be returned, whether that's because it's a duplicate or it's just not needed. Next, gifts don't have to be physical items. If you're looking for a gift idea, it is perfectly fine to think outside of the box. Literally. Consider giving memberships, experiences, or even a little bit of your time. Especially in today's day and age, people are always busy, people are always working. Sometimes just offering to give your time is enough of a gift. Next, consider giving a greeting card with the gift. Cards offer the perfect space for a heartfelt note. They're also convenient for giving cash, checks, or gift cards if that's the route you decide to go down. But cards can also serve another useful purpose too. If someone is receiving a lot of gifts at a party or for a special occasion, they can use your card to help them to remember what you specifically gave. The next one is to purchase from wish lists and gift registries when you can. Heartfelt, thoughtful, and unique gifts are, great. They're really good. But if someone has a wish list or a registry, you can't go wrong by purchasing from it, and it's probably what they'd appreciate the most. There are items that a person or a couple will really want or will find useful. Anything else in that scenario might just end up gathering dust. And the next one is to don't be afraid to ask what someone needs. And then next is to think beyond the moment of exchange. Everyone wants a wow moment, a stunned, ecstatic family member or friend who can't believe how lucky they are to have received such a good gift. But those moments are fleeting, and the recipient will be stuck with the gift well beyond that initial exchange. Research indicates that rather than striving for a big reaction, we should focus on what will ultimately provide the most utility or long-term enjoyment. Next, if someone doesn't want a gift, don't get on one. Cynthia Du Bois has an excellent video about how it feels to receive a gift when you've explicitly stated that you do not want one, and I'll leave the link to that down below. Generally, if giving a gift is about making someone feel loved, then we should accept that some people prefer to be loved in other ways. All in all, the simplest way to go about gift giving is perhaps to write a mini bio about the recipient, even if you happen to know them well. Write a 3-sentence description of the person you have in mind, paying close attention to their enthusiasms, obsessions, interests, and work from there. On the flip side, don't stress about gifts for people you don't know well. These are usually surface-level relationships that don't require a very personalized gift. Giving something too specific to someone you don't know well can lead to discomfort. Knowing a simple fact about someone, like their favorite sports team, favorite plant, restaurant, and so on, is usually all you need to cater to acquaintances. Or you could just not give a gift at all. That's cool too. Bye.